So we're getting closer now. Over here is Park Avenue, which comes in at an angle and joins up with Hanover. And then I think it becomes Park after that, the rest of the way to campus. But right around there, there's a cross street called Plum. And by this time, I've been hearing the screams for a minute. And she was saying, "Oh my God, oh my God." And, you know, sometimes people say, "Oh my God," under different circumstances. Drunk, revelry, parties. By this point, I knew that it wasn't a good thing. This is Plum. When I got here, my intention was to walk straight because the campus is right there. But I just kind of automatically made a right without really thinking about it, I guess. And by this point, it's dawning on me that whatever it is just a block or two ahead, and it's bad. So I found myself jogging at that point, somewhere in this area. I was pretty much at a full run, and didn't know, you know, obviously what it is I was running towards. But it's one of those times when, you know, you're not just, you know, you don't think, you just act. So it kind of didn't really matter what I was running towards. I was still running. This is Grove. The next street beyond is Floyd. The grad building that I used to work in is on Floyd. So by about right here, I think I could clearly see ahead of me on the other side of Grove, right about there. The cars were parked there just like that, only it's nighttime, very dark. And just beyond the corner of that house, in between the cars, I saw two figures silhouetted up against the car. I could see them because down the street further, there was one of those yellow street lamps. And I saw them silhouetted against that light, so I could see the figures clearly. And by this point, I'm running pretty much full out. It's a good thing no one was coming on Grove, because I don't think I stopped at all. But as I recall it, I was kind of halfway across the street when I saw the one figure. I could tell his head snapped around towards me, and I knew whoever it was had spotted me. I assumed it was a man and a woman. The figure against the car was smaller. The other figure was larger. When he spotted me, he took off running, and he ran straight away. And I ran, and I remember having a passing thought that I was just running by where they were. But at that point, I was still chasing him. And yeah, I think maybe it was right here. It was just a little ways down from the corner and right about here. But I kept going, and I could see him ahead running. Hi there. And when he ran this way, he ran into the light, and I could see him for a brief second illuminated. I could tell it was an African-American male, probably around 6 feet, thin, wearing sneakers and jeans, and perhaps a blue t-shirt. But that's all I could tell. Now, when he got to here, and he's running and I'm running, when he got to here, he suddenly darted down this alley. And when he did, I got to the alley, and I looked down, and there was nobody there. Of course, there's people there now, but there weren't that night. There was light at the other end of the alley, another street lamp, so it was well illuminated. And it was another situation where if there was anybody here, I would see them silhouetted by that light. And I looked down there, and there's nothing there. Split second before that, saw him duck down here. He couldn't have made it down to the other side that fast, so he's clearly hiding. And I realized I don't have the advantage now. I don't know where he is, but he can see me because I know I am silhouetted against the light. The tactical aspect of it gave me pause. And as soon as I had, you know, a moment to think, I thought, well, what happened to the girl? And so I looked back this way and I didn't see anything. And I looked back this way and he's still hiding, or else he's ducked through someone's yard and escaped that way. So at that point I said, all right, forget that. I'm just going to walk back to see what happened to the girl that was up here. So I went back to where I first saw them. Let's say it was this car and it's white. Didn't see anything. Didn't see anything at all. I looked this way, I looked that way. I'm like, well, where did she go? You know, it's like she vanished. Because this all happened very, very fast. And so finally, I walked in between the cars, and the car that was here was parked much closer, so I had to kind of squeeze through. And as I walked across, I noticed on this white car there was something smeared all the way across the hood. And I had a feeling what it was, but you know, like I said, the street lamps here at the time were yellow, so anything red, any blood, anything like that would just look brown, you know. So there's this huge brown smear, and I walked out into the street, and right here, beside the front driver's side wheel of the car that was there at the time, she was lying here with her feet that way and her head here and her arms by her sides, and she was just collapsed there. And you know, nobody else on the street. And I looked around. Finally, I moved in close and I knelt down to her, and she hadn't been moving. I put my hand on her arm to feel a pulse, and she actually startled me because her chest started heaving, and it's almost like she was convulsing a little bit, but I think it was coming from the involuntary heaving of the chest. She had pink foam issuing from her mouth. I knew her lungs were compromised in some manner, and all of a sudden she stopped all at once, and her face was literally covered in red. The only part that wasn't red were her eyes were open and they were staring straight up. And so I was looking at her and I was having a sensation like I knew this person, but you know, that wasn't the immediate issue. You know, so I didn't linger on it. But while I was, you know, again seeking a pulse, she started convulsing again with that heaving, and then she stopped all at once, and she was gone. She died with me holding her hand. And so, somewhere in the midst of all that, someone from the surrounding apartments and houses, someone called out and was like, "Is everybody okay? Or everything okay?" And I said, "No, someone's been injured." I said something like, you know, "No, someone's been hurt. Call the police and an ambulance." And you know, I knew an ambulance was useless, but I knew they would have to remove the body. So, well, that's what I said. And I stayed with her here. I waited for what I felt like was about 20 minutes. It could have been shorter, but it felt like 20. And right up here, at Grove, police car rolled up as if to block Plum right here. They were out of Grove, but they were over here. And I started walking over there. And he got out. It was a uniformed officer. And he said something like, you know, someone down, someone injured, someone. And I said, yeah. I said dead, actually. And I led him over here to where the body was. And he had a flashlight. He turned it on, and he shone the light on her face. And what had been, up to that point, a brown mask, it was when his light hit it, the most shocking red I've ever seen. And her eyes were still open, looking straight up. And he turned the light off, and he walked on back to his cruiser and kind of left me standing there. And so I started following him, and we got up here, and he radioed something on his radio. And you know, the whole time a lot of things go through your mind. I'm thinking things like, well, I know where I'm spending the rest of the night. I'm going to be downtown giving testimony and descriptions, and then I thought, hell, I might even be a suspect because I was the only one out on the street when this happened. So I was just being prepared for anything, I mean, I didn't know. So I stood there, and he didn't say anything. And I stood there, and he was still silent. And after a while, I'm like, well, do you want to know what happened? And he's like, oh, yeah, kind of that attitude, And so I said, all right, well, and I kind of told him what had happened up to that point, and I told him about the guy in the alley and everything. And he was like nodding. He had this air of disinterest. And I'm not trying to say anything about Richmond PD then or now. I'm just saying that this particular officer, to me at that time, and maybe I'm wrong, felt kind of disinterested. And it may have been his way of dealing with the graphic nature of it all. I don't know. But more silence. And then, incredibly, to me anyway, I finally broke this long silence by saying, well, do you want my information or my name or, my phone number? And he had like an irritated look on his face, and he pulled out his pad from his breast pocket and a pen, and he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And so I gave him my name, gave him my phone number, told him I was a student, gave him my address, which is right over there. And he jotted something down, and then there was more silence. And no police officers had come yet to join him. And I'm not sure how long, but I sat there for a while longer, and finally I said, well, am I free to go? And he was like, oh, yeah, you can go. And I was like, okay. So I walked home, the same way I'd come. And when I got there, I pulled out my sketchbook and I wrote down the entire incident. Because for one reason, I felt like I would need to remember the details, because surely they're going to call me and talk to me about this. So I wanted to make sure it was all fresh in my mind, so I wrote it all down. I even did a little sketch, because, I'm also processing the information for myself at the same time, too. As we head back, I'm walking back. The next day, as it happens, as I said, there's a School of the Arts here, painting and printmaking department, a lot of art professors. A lot of them belong to a co-op gallery, 1708 East Main, that used to be on East Main Street. 1708 gallery still exists, but it's on Broad Street today. And its original location, it was 1708 East Main, and a lot of the professors there were members of the co-op gallery. But they couldn't be bothered to do some of the things required of them, like gallery set. There was a requirement to gallery set once a month if you were a member of the gallery. So instead, they'd pay students to do it for them. And the students needed the money, so it was all good. And that was my situation. I was gallery sitting for the late, great Morris Urowski, professor here at the time. So I was at the gallery, and I got a phone call, and I answered. And it happened to be a man named Michael Drought. He was the chairman of the painting and printmaking department at VCU. He told me he'd heard what happened, and that I had been there, and all that. And I think in the past I thought, how did he know? But I think what happened was that I was always in the painting and printmaking department office, because I did work study there as well. I told Nancy, the secretary, and she told my friend John, and John told Michael. And anyway, he called me, I guess to offer his condolences, or to see if I was okay, if I needed anything. I told him I was doing fine, and we talked for a while, and then he said, yeah, it's particularly hard when it's one of your own. And at that moment, when he said that, it dawned on me, and I thought it was Barbara. And I had to ask to make sure I was right, but I knew it as soon as he said that. It's as if my brain said, well, we're going to put that aside for a minute and deal with this other stuff. We'll come back to that later. And it didn't come back until he said that. And he didn't mention her name. He just said, one of your own. And I thought it was Barb. And I said, who was it? He said, Barbara Powers. And I'm like, yeah, I know. In the aftermath of that, and the crazy thing is, I didn't have any concept of it at the time, but I learned later, I'm not even sure how long later, but long enough that it wasn't a thing anymore, that Richmond police detectives were canvassing Plum, Grove, all of the fan, looking for eyewitnesses, anybody with clues or leads or tips or just anything, because they had nothing. They did have one thing, but it wasn't that useful, as it turned out. And I didn't know this at the time. This is also something I found out afterwards. But 20 minutes earlier, there was another attack on Park, where someone with the same description as what I knew of this person attacked a woman going into her house on her porch. And she was able to fend him off well enough to get in the house and get away from him, although she did get stabbed. But she recovered. But she was able to give some description, but really the description she gave wasn't much better than mine. The person must have had a mustache, because in a cold case report that I read online, there's a description given of him, and one of the features is mustache. And that didn't come from me, but of course none of it came from me because they never talked to me. But otherwise it jived with what I saw. It's a little fairy shrine here that I thought I'd take a look at for a second. This should be over at Barbara's place, her spot on Plum. I might leave something. I learned later that they had canvassed the place, returning to places multiple times, and somehow they completely evaded me. And I was working under the assumption that, well, I gave them my name and number and phone number and address. I even told them where I went to school. Surely if they wanted me, they'd call me, right? But they never did, so I figured they didn't need me. And I never got wind of any of the stuff that was going on, which is crazy because I literally worked in that building every day. That was the center of her, activity too, The paintings that she did were in that building. But somehow I missed it. And years later, I learned that some of that stuff had happened. And I contacted the Richmond Police Department Cold Case Division, I'm going to call it. And I did meet with two detectives and talk about what I saw and about the scene. But this was 30 years later, and I did it, just to complete something. I think I knew it wouldn't help justice. The person who did this got away with it, but they probably didn't get away with something, and probably wound up in jail for something. Or maybe they turned over a new leaf. But I know they didn't go down for this. And it made me think that this kind of thing happens a lot. A lot of people actually get away with something like this. And really Barbara is one of many that die like this. Their family, their inner circle are devastated by it. And for the most part, the rest of the world doesn't know anything of it. And I don't know. I think this is more of completing a thought because, it tugs at your sense of justice and this and that. And I can't do anything for the rest of those people. I don't have anything to offer the rest of those people. But I did know Barbara, and I can offer something up for her. And I don't know. There's something valuable in more people being aware of her life. And it never hurts to reiterate the idea to be aware of your surroundings, to be safe. She was heading back from a band meeting. She became, oddly enough, the manager for a local punk rock band called the Undertakers. And she was heading back from that meeting, and she took a shortcut from a well-lighted street into one of the darkest streets in the Fan, alone. A crime of opportunity was primed and ready, and she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But you gotta keep yourself out of those situations. You have to maximize the likelihood that you are not a target. If you act like a target and you put yourself in a vulnerable situation, you're a target. So if she'd have stayed on a well-lit street and walked with a companion, she'd be here. And I've said that a lot over the years, ever since this incident. And keep your head up. Use your field of vision. Look as far as you can see in every direction, not just right around you. Know everything that's around you. You don't have to be neurotic or paranoid. Just keep your head up. Don't walk into a situation and be surprised by it, because you could avoid trouble from 2 blocks away if you spotted it that soon. You know, it's the old situational awareness thing, but it's true, particularly in an urban setting. The other interesting thing about Barbara at this time was that I knew her as a jean-wearing flannel shirt, wearing untucked bandana scarf on her head, long-haired brunette at the time, who was always smiling and was very Christian. And when I found her, she was wearing tight jeans, cowboy boots, a white tank, and her hair was chopped really short. So couldn't have really, you wouldn't really have recognized her if you couldn't have seen her face. I did recognize her, so at least some part of me did. And I don't mention what she was wearing as if to, judge her for what she was wearing, because that's not my point at all. There's no victim blaming here. My point is that she was entering a new phase. She was experimenting with her identity. She was trying on new things. It's what you do when you're young. She was spreading her wings. That's what's significant about what she was wearing. And it was just the first of many phases that she should have gone through, and she didn't get to. I think she would have been 57 now. She was just a year younger than me.